Good morning, 10th grade English class. This is take 2 because I didn't like how the first take went. Today we are going to be talking about poetry. Yes, more poetry. You're going to be reading a lot of poems in your book. Today we're going to be talking about some definitions that you'll need to know for your test and that you'll need to know to be able to analyze and look at poetry that we're going to be exploring. We've already covered a few poems. We've covered Robert Frost, and the two poems by him, and we've gone over the sonnet by William Shakespeare, and we went over those other three poems, The Taxi, Heart We Will Forget Him, and Simile. So if you go back and look at those poems, you'll be able to see where some of this fits in those poems. But we're going to be moving on with this today because this will apply more to the next poem we're going to be reading by John Masefield called Sea Fever, and we'll explore that one tomorrow, but I might go ahead and post it today on Google Classroom. All of this information can be found in your book on page 503 to 504. If you don't have your book, I will be taking a picture of my book and posting it on Google Classroom along with the poem, and so you have no reason to not have the information that you need when we take our final poetry test. And I would encourage you to keep up to date with these poems so that they don't get ahead of you and you don't have so much you have to study for later. All right, well, just a few things to talk about. So we know that poetry is a musical kind of speech. And poetry is based on this alternation of stressed and unstressed sounds, the things that make your voice rise and fall. And that is called rhythm. It's a great word, rhythm. It has no official vowels. We know that Y serves as a vowel, but I just think it's kind of interesting. It's a word that has all consonants in it. So rhythm, this is the pace, the way the beat kind of hits when you're saying things. This is what we often like in our music, which music is just poetry set to music. That's what your lyrics are. Your lyrics start out as poetry, and then they are placed with music, and that rhythm, that natural rhythm kind of comes through. So next time you listen to a song, you might notice that. So this is the definition you'll need to know for rhythm. Now, when a poet writes a poem, he or she can choose. They can choose if they want to have a strict rhythmic pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in each line, like I want 10 syllables in this line, and I want it to be stressed, unstressed, or unstressed, stressed, or whatever the pattern is, and I want it to rhyme every other word. Or they can have a loose rhythm. So if they choose a strict rhythm, this is called choosing a meter. And meter is this strict rhythmic pattern. This is what Shakespeare chose in Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day. Now, a poet could also choose to not have very many rules. They just want to express themselves through words, but not necessarily have everything set and strict. And this would be called free verse. Now, you might remember that we talked a while back when we were reading Julius Caesar about blank verse. Now, blank verse is not the same as free verse, although it might be easy to get them confused. But free verse is very loose because it's free. Blank verse it does have a meter. It has unstressed, stressed. It has 5 instances of that per line. So it's strict, it's just not rhymed. So when Shakespeare wrote in blank verse, that was unrhymed iambic pentameter. So it did have meter. Now, if you choose to have a meter with your poem, every time you write, you'll have these different little pairings or groups of unstressed, stressed, or stressed, unstressed. And we call that a foot. So you might have 5 feet in your line. You might have 3 feet in your line. You might have 2 feet in your line. It just depends on how long your lines are. And you would probably continue that pattern throughout the poem. It gives it a lot of structure. There are actually 5 different kinds of metric feet, and you're not going to have to know these. They make good bonus questions, but you don't have to know them. But I do like to just briefly go over them. So the one that you're most familiar with is an iamb, like iambic pentameter. An iamb is where you have an unstressed and a stressed sound in your different syllables. So like the word insist, you can hear that. Trochee, and I don't know if I'm saying these right, but trochee is the opposite. It's where it's stressed and then unstressed, like double, double. Anapest is unstressed, unstressed, stressed. So understand, understand. That's an example of anapest. Dactyl is just the reverse of anapest. It's stressed, unstressed, unstressed. Excellent, excellent. And then spondy is stressed, stressed. So it's like football, football. That one I think is a bit of a reach, but it is considered a type of foot. Now, I read something in my book that actually made these make more sense. And if you take I am and you take the name Irene, Irene, that's an example of I am. Trochee, you can take the word Tracy, Tracy, where you accent the first. For anapest, you would take Antoinette, Antoinette, and that helps you remember. For dactyl, you take Dorothy, Dorothy, and it has the same sound. And then for spondy, you use says who, says who. So, I don't know, you might be into that kind of thing, you might not. I think it's interesting, but I'm an English teacher, so. All right, lastly, when you have the repetition of accented vowel sounds and the subsequent sounds in a word, that just means the other sounds that are in there with the vowel. It might be at the end of a word. This is your rhyme. So these are some of the elements that make poetry poetry. Having rhythm, having meter, having rhyme, unless you choose free verse. And so if you have free verse, then it's all bets are off because it could just be anything. All right, now I'm going to erase this. I have just a little bit more I want to tell you. I don't even know how much I'm going to write. I might just write a couple of things and let you fill in the blanks yourself. Doesn't it feel good to get a board? I used to have these students that they hated it when I would just halfway erase a board. It drove them nuts, like if I left that much on there. So I think I'm going to do that in honor of those kids today. All right, just a couple of things. With rhyme, there are different types of rhyme. There is end rhyme, and that would be rhyme where? Where do you think? At the end of a line. You can also have internal line. Internal, I cannot talk today. Internal rhyme. This is not scripted, not really rehearsed. Internal rhyme would be rhyme within a line of poetry. So you might have a word, the second word might rhyme with the last word. So that's all that internal rhyme means. It's all still rhyme. Then you can have exact rhyme. And by the way, these are all in your book, so you can look them up. They're probably in the back of the book too. But exact rhyme just means it is the exact words, like mine, thine, nine. That's an exact rhyme, okay? Then you can have approximate rhyme. This might be like follow and fellow. They're kind of similar, but they're not exact. Or let's say you did mine and dime. They don't exactly rhyme, but there's a similarity there. And so you see a lot of this in today's music. I hear more approximate rhyme than exact rhyme, personally. Okay, so a couple more things. And these are all things that you have been exposed to before. A couple of other things that you'll see in poetry and in music is alliteration. Hopefully you know what that means. I'm not going to write it, but this is the repetition of consonant sounds. So it might be the k sound that you hear all through. You see a lot of this with tongue twisters, like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. I can't even do that. But that would be alliteration, the repetition of the letter P or whatever it is. Another word that this one is not in your book, but I really like it. It's called assonance. You think you're saying something bad, but you're really not. Assonance is the opposite of alliteration. It is, well, at least I think it is. It's the repetition of vowel sounds instead of consonant. So, oops, one L in vowel. And then this is consonants. So repetition of consonants, repetition of vowels. And then the last term is, I hope I can spell this, onomatopoeia. All right, check me. Did I get it? Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. This one I really like. It's a really long word, and all it means is these are words that sound like what they are. Pow, buzz, rasp. I can't think of anything else right now, but it's basically a word that sounds like what it is. Okay. All right. That is it for today. Those are your poetry notes. Make sure you get them down. Make sure you understand them, and message me if you have any questions. TTFN. Ta-ta for now.